Let's talk about the differences between Jira Cloud and the Jira Data Center. Of course, it doesn't have to be only Jira. You can also consider Confluence for it, but let's just focus on Jira for today, for this video. Now, why are we going to be talking about this particular topic? Well, the decision to go to the cloud or to the data center will be important for two types of users watching these videos. So the first ones are those of you that are still on a server version of Jira. And Jira server version is rapidly approaching the end of life, and probably most of you will have to migrate to either cloud or data center. And one of the first decisions you will have to make before the migration is, where do you want to go? And then, of course, carry on with the migrations. We have several migrations happening at this moment, and this matter is becoming more and more pressing in terms of time. More and more companies are interested in help regarding where to migrate to. We are attending special consulting sessions. We are attending special workshops. We're helping our customers figure out what is the best path forward. And I want to help some of you as well through this video. So hopefully this will be useful. Now, the second group is, of course, those of you that are switching from a different tool to Jira, and now again you're considering, should I go to cloud, should I go to data center? So hopefully this video will be helpful for both of these groups. And I guess I should add at this point in time, as we always do, that the video is part of our effort to deliver high quality training and learning materials for the Atlassian ecosystem. If you want to support this, consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, remember that we offer paid services in this area, migration included. We have world-class experts with lots of experience in this area, and experience really, really matters over here. Now, let's go into the differences. And I will be talking about several different points. Some of them are more important for the cloud. Some of them are more important for the data center. So just bear with me and let's go through this together. So the first thing I want to mention are automatic updates. Of course, the main difference between cloud and data center is that in the data center, the solution is self-hosted. So the infrastructure is on your side. And that's something that definitely we need to understand. Now, because the infrastructure is on your side, you are responsible for carrying any kind of updates to the software. So whenever a new version of Jira is released, you have to go on and update the software on your servers. Now, in the cloud, there is no need for that because Atlassian does it for you. So whenever a new version of the cloud is available, it just gets rolled out through the whole world, all the servers available, and after some hours, sometimes 1 or 2 days, you're getting all the new features coming with the new release without any additional efforts. That's definitely a huge plus for the cloud. The same goes really for bug fixing. Again, any kind of loopholes that are found in the software are getting fixed very quickly on the cloud and getting released for all the users, again, super quick. Now, if you have the self-hosted version, you know the drill. You will have to wait for the new version to be available, probably test it before, install it, which of course takes time and takes resources. So in both of those cases, I think a big plus for the cloud solution. And of course, talking about infrastructure, you have to remember that this infrastructure has to be managed. You have to pay for those services. You have to pay for those machines, any kind of networks connecting it. You have to pay for the people that will be maintaining it, keeping it up to date, taking care of it. So these are, of course, some additional costs that have to be considered. Talking about costs in terms of licensing, it's also quite interesting because there are differences in licensing between the cloud and data center solutions. In the cloud, first of all, you have several versions of Jira Cloud. So there is a free one up to 10 users. We are not talking about this one in this video. Then you have a standard version, you have a premium version, and you have the enterprise version. So premium and enterprise version are adding some additional benefits on top of what the standard version already has. And there are several aspects to it. Some of them will be mentioned later on in this video, some of them not, because I thought that maybe they are not very important for the majority of the users. But on the data center, you have just one version of the data center. But still, the biggest of the differences in both of those solutions is that in the cloud you pay always per user, per single user. And on the data center, there are tiers. So you have to pay for all the users up to a certain tier. So for example, up to 500 users, up to 1,000 users, up to 2,000 users, right? So if you have 503 people, you will still have to pay for this higher tier, even if you're not using all of those licenses just yet because your company is growing. Whereas on a cloud solution, your costs will keep growing steadily, linearly with the company, so to say. So that's definitely a plus of the cloud solution as well. Also, it's worth mentioning that the cloud solution is in generally a lot more available for smaller companies, simply because if you want to switch to the data center version, first of all, it is recommended for bigger companies, but I get a feeling that that's mostly because Atlassian wants to migrate everybody to the cloud, and they are promoting the cloud more than the data center versions, and they always say that they are the cloud first company. Cool, I don't have a problem with that, but at the same time, the data center licenses are available starting from 500 users. So if you are a smaller company, then probably cloud is the only way to go, really, and then you can just finish with this video and be done with the decision. Pretty simple, I guess. Now, another thing that is maybe not that big, but still worth considering is that if you go to the cloud, you get a domain assigned to you by Atlassian. You don't get to choose your own domain as an address of your Jira Confluence, which people will use to enter into the browser to go to your services, issues, projects, and so on. And also, maybe not that important for most of you, but for some of you, it will be very important. The cloud version has no direct access to the database. So the data is stored somewhere on the Atlassian servers, but you don't get access to this data through the database. Now, why would you want to have access to the data through the database? Most cases, you want to have this kind of access because you want to reach for the data and pull it out, for example, for some kind of integrations with different tools. So you want to pull the data, maybe put it into some hub, transform the data, send it to another application. In the Jira Cloud, it will be a lot more difficult. Not saying impossible, but definitely a lot more difficult, and you will have to use some kind of plugins that will possibly help you to do that. Although I have to mention that the API available on the cloud version is also much more limited than the one available for the data center and server version previously. So there is always that, and whatever you need, it's worth analyzing first whether it's actually doable on the cloud version of Jira. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the data center, because I'm talking cloud. And most of the things I've mentioned are actually pro-cloud. So the data center version might seem like a bad choice, but it's not really a bad choice. It's just a different choice. And depending on your situation, your circumstances, it might be better or it might be worse. So what should be considered when you're thinking about the data center? Well, first of all, maybe not that big, but there is a shared database and storage, right, between the data center version and the server version. So if you are in the group that is migrating from server to data center, this is big. This is big because that practically means that in very simple scenario, you can migrate from one to another simply by changing the license. And you're done. And of course, it means that you're still not using many of the features of the data center version, which I will mention later, but in a super simple scenario, you're done. Migrating to the cloud, well, that's a different story. Usually you have to use the Atlassian migrator, and so far, with the migrations that we did, I don't want to jinx it for you, but it never worked perfectly for us. There were always some kind of troubles, and we always had to troubleshoot and figure out why it doesn't work as intended and why not everything is migrating as it should. So there is that to consider always, right? But let's talk about some positives regarding the data center. Some more positives, I guess, regarding data center. So unlimited user count, unlimited cloud storage. Obviously, these are your servers, your disks, so you can put as much data on it as you want. But I also do have to mention over here that for the cloud, the limit is already very, very high. It's 35,000 users, so that's a very big instance already, and most of you, it will be completely fine. Also, in terms of storage, the limitation comes really only with the standard version of the cloud. If you're aiming for the other two versions, it's also unlimited, so you're good to go. A good version, a good thing that the data center has on top of everything that I've already mentioned is load balancer and multiple nodes. So both of those things kind of are one of the selling points of the data center, and they are important because it means that you can have multiple nodes for your servers, and they are talking with one another, communicating, and whenever one of those servers goes down, it doesn't mean that your whole application is now not available, because first of all, Jira can quickly switch all the loads to the remaining nodes and the working ones and keep the application alive. And also, if one of the nodes is getting too much of the traffic, there are mechanisms that allow you to distribute the traffic more evenly so that the nodes are balanced and the traffic is balanced. So load balancer, that's more or less what it does. Now, I squinted a little bit when I said that this is a selling point for data center, because essentially the very similar thing happens on the cloud version as well. You don't care about the balancing the data redundancy on the cloud version. It's done for you in the background also, one way or another. There are also daily updates that are created by Atlassian, which you can reach to for the last 30 days. So if something very, very bad happens, you can even bring back one of the backups that have been created by Atlassian. And of course, the same thing can be done for the data center if you want to. You probably should, right? So it is a selling point, but at the same time, it's not that big of a deal. I think like a bigger aspect connected with this is that you actually control the infrastructure. Therefore, you can make your servers faster. You can make the application work faster, which is not possible on the cloud. And some of the users have been complaining that the cloud version is visually slower than the data center version that they, or a server version previously, that they were used to working with. And that can be true in some of the cases. I did experience this myself. When I switched from server to the cloud, it seemed painfully slow compared to the very fast server version. Now, I kind of got used to it, really, so it doesn't bother me anymore, but I remember that feeling was there at that point in time. Another thing that is very, very important to consider are apps, right? So Jira has all of those apps, the whole ecosystem, thousands of them, right? And some of the apps also just quickly and not very painfully migrated from server to data center because those solutions are so similar. So those that were available for the server now are usually available for the data center as well. With the cloud, it's not often the case. So again, when you're thinking about migrations, it's worth considering which apps will actually work on your cloud version when you do the switch. Sometimes it is a little bit painful to think that you have to part your ways with some of the functionalities, but always look for some alternatives. Not always, but often there is something that can be done about this. Moving on, built-in asset management for the data center, Jira service management, and also built-in advanced roadmaps functionality included in the same license. You don't have to pay for it additionally in Jira software. So it's a little bit similar to the cloud version, but in the cloud version, in the standard version, you don't get advanced roadmaps, but if you extend it to the premium version, you will also get advanced roadmaps included in the licensing costs. But in the data center version, you get it kind of for free because there are no additional tiers over there. So it's just included in the cost of of the license for the data center. Changeable limits for automation and bulk change. So this is maybe not super important, but for those of you that are doing a lot of automations in your instances, or you do a lot of bulk changing, then the limits that are there in the Jira configuration accessible to your admins, on the data center it is configurable. On the cloud, not so much. So something to consider. And also, by the way, the cloud has limits regarding the number of automations that can be run, especially the standard version. So do consider it, do check it if it's not in your way. And also, another thing that came to my mind just now is that the automations for the standard version of the cloud can only be configured for single projects. They cannot be configured across multiple projects, which is available only in those higher tiers, premium and enterprise versions of the cloud. So something to think about as well, because automations, they very often are quite useful. They are used more and more, and they tend to speed up the work, but that's basically what they are designed to do. So it's sometimes a little bit awkward to be resigning just because it's not available in your version of Jira Cloud. Also, I think that data center version is, of course, better suited for customizations, mostly for the reasons that already have been mentioned. Access to the database, better API, right? And on top of this, you have access to all the servers, all the data, and it's easily to connect to it. On the cloud version, not so much. So if you are a bigger company and if you want to create some custom solutions around your Jira or just customize your Jira, you probably want to move to that data center version, definitely. Now, another thing that is worth mentioning is that on-premise hosting, in some cases, may be simply required or mandatory for some companies. That is the case. Some companies are obliged to take a lot better care for the data, and they are not allowed to store the data outside of their facilities, for example. Right? So in this case, again, data center is the way to go. You don't have a choice. So just don't look behind you. I mentioned performance. I'm just looking at my notes, last 2 points. So performance have been mentioned by me, and I told you that data center, because it's on-premise version, you control the environment, you control the infrastructure. If you feel like you want stronger service to make the application faster, snap, spend lots of millions of dollars, and it's done, right? And the last thing I have over here, very, very important. So last but not least, I should say probably, it's very easy to have test environments when you're working with data center. You just put another server, put another node, and you make it a test environment. And it's easy also to copy the data and have it all, working without major sweat. Now on a cloud version, the test environments, or the sandbox as it's called over there, they are also available, but again, only for those higher tiers. So if you're Jira Cloud Standard, no test environment for you, which is a big pain, even for us experts who are helping other companies figure out how to configure the Jira, what to do, apply some automations and stuff like that. Because if we go to the customer that only has the standard version of the Jira Cloud, and we want to make some important, sometimes very crucial but delicate changes, which carry some risk with it, there's no way for us to test it. Of course, we can test our own smaller test instances, but you never know what will happen on the large data set, right? So that's where the cloud standard version has a big drawback, in my opinion. Maybe simply because I'm used to working with bigger companies. For example, for most likely for those smaller companies, it's not that big of a deal. But if you are introducing some changes that may result in data loss, you want to make those changes on the test environment fast, don't you? Right? And the same goes, for example, with the migration. If you're doing the migration, you do want to have test environments to make sure that the migration goes smoothly. And only when you're happy with the results done on test environments, you can then do the migration on the production environment. And again, it's not that important here on the cloud because, of course, the cloud is empty at this point in time. You're migrating to it, so there's nothing there. So even if you migrate directly to your first environment and it's crap, it doesn't work, you can just erase everything and start the migration over from the beginning. But later on, you may be, for example, applying some customizations, maybe some connections to other apps, and maybe some just configurational changes or automation that, if done wrong, some wrong script that actually deletes the data instead of updating it, and all the data is gone. So sure, you have the updates that you can reach back to, but maybe half of the day of work or 1 day of work has already been lost, and that's still significant. So that's why I don't like this one very much, and I think it's a big flaw of the cloud version. So that's all of the differences I've prepared for you today. These are not all the differences that are out there, so I've skipped some of the points that I think are maybe not that important for the majority of the community of the users. So don't backlash at me in the comments, but let me know in the comments whether you think that data center or the cloud for your particular case is the way to go, or if you're struggling with this decision, you can always reach out to us and ask for help, and we will do our best to provide you with the best possible insights regarding both of those solutions so that you can make the conscious best decision for your particular environment, case, finances, and needs. So all the information regarding how to contact us you will find in the description of this video. And with this, that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in one of the next ones.